Hi friends, I'm downtown today. I want to talk about a couple of photo walks I went on recently, and also I visited a place just north of downtown where a small wildfire broke out that could have been potentially awful.
Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song. Let me sing forevermore. Thank you very much. You have a great night.
Sound good,
Thank
man?
you.
Behind me is one of the spots I came to, and this is my favorite intersection downtown. It is interesting because there's a lot of foot traffic, there's a lot of business people, and there's a lot of interesting backgrounds to put said people on. I'm always paying close attention to where the light's coming from, and that day it was coming from that way. It was 5 o'clock p.m. and I used the bank as a background, which I love. I love that building. I got down low, waited patiently, and grabbed a couple of people in mid-stride. It worked out nicely. So many restrictions. What are we in, North Korea? This spot behind me is incredibly interesting to me. You have a stage door, a proper stage door, and an even more proper stage door sign. You can just imagine the acting talent that has roamed about, sharing ideas, sharing each other's deepest thoughts and secrets, the occasional pat on the back for support, the occasional scolding when someone didn't quite get the inflection right on the line. The steroid use. Wait, they don't do that in acting, do they? I went to another spot right up here where I sat right next to the bike lane and waited for cyclists to come by. I waited there patiently, and I also moved up the road, staying close to the bike lane as I went, looking for the same types of results. I want to make my own version of that sticker that says, "I hate art." At one point I quickly stopped by a plaza and got a photo of a guy sitting down and playing a piano that pedestrians can sit down and play upon. He sounded pretty good. That's a lot of filing cabinets. Now I'm making my way to a spot that I recently rediscovered. The first time I went there, I don't remember being terribly impressed with it. This time, I am. And that's because they painted on the walls. They recently temporarily closed down this tunnel, and I wonder if it's because they were painting these neat new artworks. My theory is that the reason I wasn't so impressed before is that these paintings weren't here before. I'm not entirely sure, but that seems to make sense to me. I'm super happy I rediscovered this place because you have really fantastic backgrounds, you have interesting lighting spilling in from either side of the tunnel, and you have a lot of cyclist traffic and foot traffic as well. And all the pillars and the moldy-esque roof, all together this place is a bit of a playground for me. Balls. I started looking for shots. I quickly became infatuated with this large, colorful eye, and I also realized it would be a good idea to drag my shutter and create a sense of motion. So while I was in there, something beautiful happened. There was a guy who stumbled upon me taking photos, and he was a very kind, curious fellow, and he was asking me questions about my photos and what I'm up to. And so I told him, and this conversation proceeded from being about my photos that I was taking and what I'm up to, and it made its way into photos he was taking and what I thought of them. It went into art guidelines and philosophy. Quickly and violently made its way into things such as the meaning of life, and then made a subtle return back to art, philosophy, and guidelines. So I had set a timer on my phone to avoid having to pay for parking, because I have a 2-hour time limit in the parking garage that I go to, and if I don't, I have to pay $2. I was really happy that I had set this timer and that I was going to obey this timer. Well, the timer went off, I think, probably 3 minutes before this guy showed up. I started talking to him and I went over my time, and I had to make a decision at some point that, oh, sprinklers. I'm gonna get wet. Okay. No, I think it's just missing me. It's a miracle. Oh, nope, it got my leg. Okay, I moved a foot to the left. But you know what? If a water droplet hits my leg, that's just okay. I made a decision that the conversation was worth $2. The only downside is I wasn't able to buy a cup of coffee for me and him for $2 to be able to further enjoy the conversation. Ooh, oh, the sprinklers feel lovely. Okay, moving on. Directly above me is a new photo location that I came across recently. It is an elevated train station that sits on a bridge over another train station that's on ground level. And I was wandering around this area the other day looking for something interesting, not sure if that would occur as per usual. And I'm making my way down the bridge back down to street level, and I noticed that there's a guy who's standing on the train platform. A train had just pulled in and stopped, and he was backing up as if he was about to jump across. And I thought I should take a picture of this. So I whipped my camera around with the reflexes of a cheetah during a blood moon and snapped one photo, I believe. And I wasn't sure if I had gotten anything. I wasn't sure where I caught him in the jump. It happened so quickly that I couldn't even think. Photos like this are why it's important to practice as a street photographer. Not only so you know how to operate your camera and have your settings in the right place when the serendipitous moment occurs, but so that you can get your framing somewhat proper. You can always go in later and crop it to fix your mistakes. But the idea is you want to get as close to successful in your framing as possible. If my camera was not set up to capture this moment, and if my body and mind did not have the built-in reactionary processes necessary to pull it off in the way that I pulled it off, I would not have pulled it off in the way that I pulled it off. After I took the photo, I noticed that the young group of friends were sharing exclamations of joy at what had just occurred in their lives, and how they want to change the world, but they want to have fun. And who needs discipline to change the world? Forget that. Let's go party. I decided they might want to see the photo, and when I showed them, they were overwhelmed with joy. In fact, one of them exploded. It was awful. It was really sad. It's in the newspaper and everything. Blood all over it's an extensive cleanup process. So I'm back home. I'm on my balcony. Perhaps I don't spend enough time out here. It's quite nice. I have my dog sitting there. It's very scenic. There's a mountain right there. It's calming. So the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video was that I visited a spot where a grass fire broke out just north of downtown Salt Lake City. Technically in downtown Salt Lake City, but in the neighborhoods north of the main part of downtown. To give you an idea, I looked on Google Maps, and the fire happened 2,000 feet from the Utah State Capitol building. We're in wildfire season here in Utah and all across the West Coast, as I'm sure you've probably seen in the news. And our air has been thick with the smoke from fires in Utah, but also fires all the way west as California. I was doing research today, and I came across satellite imagery of the path of smoke from these fires on the western half of the United States, and they sort of funnel into an arrow and come straight towards Salt Lake City. And so we get the tail end of it. So many of the fires in Utah tend to happen pretty far away from populated areas, and a lot of Utah is not populated, but some of them happen in populated areas. Just last year I drove out to one that was maybe 20 or 30 miles or so north of downtown Salt Lake City, and I believe that one took out a house or two. So this fire that we're talking about today was interesting because it was 2,000 feet away from the Utah State Capitol building, but it was also in the middle of a neighborhood. And 49 firefighters went out to fight this. It grew to be 100 acres in size. When I got there, I realized just how close this fire had made it to houses. You have a road, and on one side of the road you have a black hill, and on the other side of the road you have someone's home. And so I made my way down the hill onto this black charred landscape, and it was interesting. I never experienced this before. It looked quite apocalyptic. Wow, this is insane. I guess I can go down there. Never been on a burned out landscape before. Me and my wife have been going through the Harry Potter movies lately, and this doesn't look much different. Made its way into this corner, made its way down there, but this will give you an idea of the size of it. When I experience things like this that are potentially devastating things, whether on a small scale like within a family or on a bigger scale like this with a fire that could destroy many families' homes and possibly hurt or kill people, I always think about what this situation would have been like 100 years ago, and it could have been drastically different. Technology is a fantastic thing. It's like nowadays we have high pressure hoses and super neat and technical fire trucks and helicopters and planes. These people have fire retardant suits and oxygen tanks. 100 years ago we would have had, I don't know, a wagon full of water. I guess they just drive the wagon into the fire. 2,000 years ago, they would have tried to maybe sacrifice a goat to the fire, perhaps. Like, how did they deal with wildfires in 1450? I don't know if they did. I think there are a lot of stories of wildfires being really horrible things. Entire cities up in flames. It's like childbirth was a much more dangerous thing in the Middle Ages than it is now. So, if you don't have anything to feel grateful for today, if you give birth to a child tomorrow, no matter who you are, no matter what your gender is, they would figure out a way to make it work and you wouldn't die. And that's a special thought. Okay, that's it for this one. Thank you. If you like this video, if you like it, it'll let me know that you liked it. And if you liked it a lot, feel free to subscribe. Also, feel free to check out my shop. That's how you can support what I'm up to here. And I hope you have a lovely day. Goodbye.